Hello, this is Brian. Today is a very balmy Saturday afternoon, or actually Saturday evening, July 24th, 2021, and I am at the foot of the Tehachapi Mountains here in Kern County, Southern California, and I want to provide a spotlight on trees video, a double edition. So today, my focus is on two varieties of the same tree. Today's spotlight focuses on Oregon white oak, Quercus garryana, variety garryana, and Brewer Oak, Quercus garryana, variety breweri. Well, I'm right next to a Brewer Oak right now, and this is Quercus garryana, variety breweri. Like all other oaks, it is a member of the Beech Family, the Fagaceae, and it is a member of the white oak subgroup, the Lepidobalanus, also known as section Quercus. So, Brewer Oak, I'm going to start off with Quercus garryana variety breweri. The Brewer Oak is more of a shrub than a tree. It can take on small tree proportions, but it is typically more of a large, sometimes very large, thicket-forming shrub. And you can see here's the scope of this plant right here. You see, it's a shrub. It's maybe about 15 feet tall. And it is a member, again, of the white oak group. And you can kind of tell because the leaves are lobed, like your stereotypical oak leaf is lobed. With Brewer Oak, the leaves tend to be quite shallowly lobed. They could be more deeply lobed on older branches and stems. Here we go. Here's an example right here. Here's an older leaf of Quercus garryana variety breweri. The underside of the leaf is paler colored and is very lightly fuzzy. So some leaves are shallowly lobed, some leaves are fairly deeply lobed. And that's pretty common with a lot of our oaks that tend to display a lot of variability in their form. So, being that this is a white oak, it has a lot of relatives in this area. We are in Kern County, just above the city of Tehachapi. We're about 5,500, 5,600 feet above sea level right now. So we're actually quite high. But Brewer Oak tends to be a foothill and lower to middle elevation mountain shrub / small tree. It can be found in mixed woodland like this. This is mostly valley oak. We got valley oak, which is over here. We got valley oak, Quercus lobata. We got blue oak, Quercus douglasii. And we also got California black oak, Quercus kellogii. So out of all of those that I have just listed, all but one are fairly closely related. So when you heard me name this one here, California black oak, Quercus kellogii, it is a black oak, or generally more known as a red oak. Black oaks are members of the red oak group, which includes Quercus kellogii, some of our oaks back east like Quercus coccinea, Quercus palustris, Quercus velutina, the back east oaks, and some of our other tree oaks here like Quercus wazazeni and Quercus agrifolia, which are also red oaks. So those ones, the acorns ripen in 2 growing seasons on most species, except for coast live oak, which happens to ripen in 1. But now back to our regularly scheduled program with the Brewer Oaks. So here we are. Here's an older branch of Brewer Oak, and like a lot of the other scrub oaks, this is closely related to a lot of our scrub oaks, like Quercus berbertifolia, Quercus acutidens, Quercus johntuckeri, Quercus turbinella, Quercus dumosa. These are chaparral shrubs that are usually semi-evergreen to fully evergreen, whereas Brewer Oak is winter deciduous. In other words, the leaves drop off in autumn and then they leaf out again in spring. So Quercus garryana variety breweri tends to also have quite a nice fall color. It typically is more of a yellowish color, sometimes quite a golden yellow. I've seen Brewer Oaks thickets upon thickets upon thickets of them in far northwestern Los Angeles County on Lepidobalanus Mountain, which is northwest of Lake Hughes. It's in LA County, and there are lots of thickets of these along Lepidobalanus Mountain. And I happened to be there in fall one year, and they were golden yellow all over the place. And you can look on the slopes on the other side of the canyon. You could tell which ones are Brewer Oaks because they were the ones changing color, whereas the rest of the chaparral shrubs are evergreen. So Brewer Oak grows in woodland like this, sometimes in mixed conifer forest. I've seen them in the lower elevations of the Sierra Nevada, mixing in with ponderosa pine, incense cedar, and also grow here in these, again, open woodlands, sometimes grassy areas, and also, again, in chaparral. So they're one of the relatively few, fully winter deciduous chaparral shrubs. If you go by Lepidobalanus Mountain, they're mixing in with interior live oak, they're mixing in with ceanothus, manzanita, they're mixing in with all your typical evergreen chaparral shrubs. Only thing is, this one's fully winter deciduous. So we're really going to look at the bark. So we're looking at the bark on some of the middle and upper branches. Kind of has that flaky, ridge furrow look to it. And then further down, the bark tends to get a little flakier. And that's not unlike a lot of the evergreen scrub oaks that grow in the lowlands, and like Quercus berbertifolia, Quercus acutidens, Quercus johntuckeri. They also kind of have flaky, furrowed bark as well. So you can see some of the relationship there. Of course, again, the bark gets a little flakier the further down on the trunk you go, as you can see here. And the leaves on Quercus garryana variety breweri, the Brewer Oak, they tend to be kind of on the small side. It's an adaptation to an often very dry microclimate where it can sometimes be found. I saw the ones growing in the chaparral by Lepidobalanus. Some of them actually had fairly decent sized leaves, but most of them were about the size as these ones here. So let's get a better perspective on this guy. It's a beautiful, beautiful oak. Beautiful. Widespread, maybe about 15, 20 feet tall. It's a beautiful oak, and it's honestly, it's when I first saw this when I was hiking Lepidobalanus Mountain. Well, actually, the first time I saw one was here, but I didn't recognize it. I thought maybe it was a Valley Blue Oak hybrid, and as I saw the Brewer Oaks on Lepidobalanus Mountain in LA County, then I realized, yeah, what I saw down here was indeed this. And now there are a lot of them around here, actually. So again, winter deciduous, white oak. Acorns ripen in one growing season. The female flowers are fertilized in the spring, like the spring of 2021. They will ripen in October of 2021. So they'll ripen in one growing season. So now it's time to shift our focus to Quercus garryana variety garryana. And this is the first time I've ever seen Quercus garryana variety garryana. I've seen Brewer Oak on at least 5 or 6 occasions, but this is my first time ever seeing Quercus garryana variety garryana. This is the Oregon white oak. This is the tree variety of Quercus garryana. As you can see here, single trunked, forming a vase-shaped crown when it's young. It's very much the habit of a tree as opposed to a shrub. Not to say that they might not be occasionally multi-trunked, but Let's see if I can get closer to one where I can show you the detail of the bark up close. Because, like the Brewer Oak, the leaves are lobed. Sometimes shallowly, sometimes quite deeply. But also, the acorns grow and ripen in one season. So these right here are mostly valley oaks, which are another relative of Oregon white oak. In fact, they can look quite similar. Actually, very similar. Here, this is a valley oak. Valley oaks tend to have more deeply lobed leaves than Oregon white oak. Not always the case. But over here, we have an actual Oregon white oak tree that's a little more mature. It's right next to a valley oak, of course. They're going to look very similar. This is a valley oak, Quercus lobata. That's an Oregon white oak, Quercus garryana, variety garryana. So again, I'm getting near these leaves here. Leaves are quite small, usually a little bit smaller than valley oak. But as you can see, they have the lobation, the lobes, that are a little bit more shallow. And this is a more mature specimen here. It's not a large tree by any stretch. It's way smaller than these valley oaks. However, this one's quite respectable. See, this one's got two trunks on it, two main trunks. So you can tell this is not Quercus garryana variety breweri. This is Quercus garryana variety garryana. This branches from the Oregon white oak. This is all right here. This is part of the Oregon white oak. That's part of the Oregon white oak, and this is part of it. That's part of the valley oak right there. So it's quite interesting to get to see these guys. Now, let's see, make sure I'm getting the right branch. Okay, so here's the Oregon white oak leaves. On this tree, they're actually a little bit smaller than on the Brewer Oak, the shrub. As you can see, again, shallowly lobed, generally more shallowly lobed than valley oak. So the sinuses, in other words, the indentations on the lobes are quite small. I'm going to compare it to a very similar valley oak. Here's a valley oak. Again, these are very similar. But I would say the lobes on valley oak, Quercus lobata, are a little more rounded on the edge. Typically a little more rounded on the edge. So for the size of Quercus garryana, variety garryana, like I said, it's typically a small, medium-sized tree. Sometimes they can get quite large. They can approach 80 feet, maybe even more. It can get quite large. More of these fertile valleys and stuff. But again, I got to show you the bark detail. That's one thing. Is the bark is pretty much the same as on Quercus garryana variety breweri, the Brewer Oak. The bark is a lot shreddier, more thinly furrowed than valley oak. Valley oak tends to have thicker bark, and I'm going to compare and contrast the two momentarily. You saw the bark on the Brewer Oak. Hopefully you can see the bark here on the Oregon white oak. Like I said, they're two varieties of the same species. So, won't get much of a texture. I'm not crossing this line and going on private property, but it's a lot shreddier. Again, like Quercus garryana variety breweri, it's shrub relative. So, the bark you saw on the Brewer Oak, it's basically the same thing on the Oregon white oak. Honestly, did not expect to see the tree variety of Oregon white oak over here. Like I said, Brewer Oak, yes, but I didn't realize that Oregon white oak actually grows here too. So I think I'm gonna have to put some vouchers on Cal Flora when I'm done shooting this video. So yeah, here's the valley oak. It's not flaky. It's not very flaky. It's a little more thickly furrowed. And another species with which Oregon white oak might be slightly confused is blue oak, Quercus douglasii. However, Quercus douglasii bark is more, it's also relatively thin, but it's not really flaky. It's got these really narrow, thin furrows. You see right here. Very thin, narrow furrows on Quercus douglasii. And the leaf of Quercus douglasii is even smaller than Quercus garryana. This is Quercus douglasii right here, blue oak. Sometimes they don't even have this many lobes on them. The leaves are very shallowly lobed. Sometimes almost not at all. So, and these species I just mentioned, except for the California black oak, the Brewer Oak, the Oregon white oak, the valley oak, and the blue oak, all these oaks, except for the California black oak that I mentioned earlier, are all in the white oak group. California black oak is a red oak, just for reference. So when you're here in the lower parts of the Tehachapi Mountains, you want to hang out by the Pacific ponderosa pines and incense cedars, white firs, and stuff like that. Take some time to look at the oaks too. You never know what kind of cool stuff you'll find just by poking around. And that's exactly what happened to me today. Had my first ever experience with the tree version of Oregon white oak, Quercus garryana, variety garryana. So this will basically do it for my spotlight on trees. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative and helpful in identifying trees here in California, especially here in beautiful Southern California. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Spotlight on Trees.